that. It's like, I guess about the size of a silver dollar. So it was cool.
So did that then lead you to get into cooking and grilling and?
No, not really. Actually, and of course I went to MBA and then to Center College. They didn't have anything in Danville. They didn't have liquor by then. In fact, it was a dry county, so they didn't have liquor at all. And it really wasn't until, and of course, we were in Glendale, Arizona in graduate school, and Glendale was outside of Phoenix. At the time, it was a very small town, and it was outside of Phoenix. Now Phoenix has grown around it. Glendale's just a part of Phoenix. But at the time, it was a small town. They didn't have a lot of restaurants either, other than a couple of Mexican restaurants. But the deal was, and of course, then after that, I went to Racine, Wisconsin, and that's a small town, and they didn't have much either. But when we went to the Philippines and then on to Singapore, Singapore is a wonderland of restaurants. They have 4 national languages in Singapore. They have Mandarin, which is Chinese. They have Malay, Bahasa Malaysia, which is the Malay language. They have Tamil, which is a southern Indian dialect, and English, because they were an English colony. So everything is in those 4 languages to, so as not to alienate any of their population. And their population is like that: Chinese, mainly Chinese, Malaysian, Indian, and English. And we found consistently, there were restaurants that served all that kind of food. And we found ourselves consistently not eating English food, which is like the worst food in the world, English food. But all of the others were just so interesting. Indian foods, Chinese foods, Malay foods were fabulous, and just so it just opened up a whole world. So we started doing that and enjoying that. And so when we came back to the States, we looked for that. We looked for interesting restaurants and fun places. Fortunately, living in Atlanta, we had that. We had a huge number of restaurants, and we could go to interesting places. So that was really good. And at the time that we moved, we were in Dunwoody, Georgia, and that was a suburb, and there really wasn't anything in terms of restaurants. So you had to drive somewhere anyway to go to a restaurant. So, we went to interesting places, and that was good. That was good. And the whole grilling thing just came about as we had a house and we had a deck. And, what do you do with a deck? Well, you put a grill on it. That's what you do. And so, had a house, had a deck, had a grill. I started grilling stuff. And, it's like mostly, you learn something, you get good at it, and then you just kind of, well, what's the next thing? What's something else we can do out here? What's something else to grill and to, so we did that. And I really enjoyed it. And then, one thing leads to another. And then I got it. Of course, I was in the restaurant industry because I was in, with the franchise restaurants. And then you get to, see other restaurants and talk to other restaurateurs and all that kind of stuff. And it just became something that was interesting to me. I just liked the restaurant industry. Was something I didn't know anything about. And so I had the opportunity to really learn a lot about restaurant industry. And part of that is cooking. So I enjoyed it.
That's cool. So this may or may not be in the same vein as, having a deck. But how did you get into cigars? When was the first time you ever puffed a cigar, and how did your interest in cigars begin?
Well, I guess the first cigar I ever had was in Singapore, but I didn't really smoke cigars in Singapore. But that would have been my first experience, and it was at least at the time. Now, we were in Singapore in the late 70s and early 80s, and at least at the time, it was a kind of a celebratory thing, we just did this big deal kind of thing and pass out cigars, and you did that with babies too, and we had a baby and I passed out cigars. So I guess, I guess that in terms of actual smoking cigars, I guess when I was with Arby's, we did a bit of that at Arby's, and I know this is hard to imagine, but my boss at Arby's had a big office, secretary, and a bar, with cognac and bourbon and scotch and all kinds of stuff, and we would sit in there and drink scotch and smoke cigars in the office. It was a staple of every conference room that you had a great big ashtray in the middle of the conference room, and everybody, most people smoked cigarettes. I mean, that was what was kind of standard. Cigarette smoking was very standard at that time, and that was like the prep for the getting ready for the meeting. The secretary would come in, she'd put out pencils, she'd put out paper, she'd empty the ashtray, that was like, that's how you prep for a meeting. So I smoked cigars off and on then. We had a lot of things to celebrate. Arby's was on a roll, we were doing well. And then I guess I hit a lull, and I didn't do it much for, a few years. And then that's the advantage of having an outdoor space, because despite the fact that we did that, you really can't smoke cigars indoors. I mean, it's just overpowering. It's just a horrible thing. So, but I had a deck. So I had a place to smoke cigars. So, I used the deck and, smoked cigars, and it was nice, I enjoyed it even as a pursuit for, an individual pursuit. It was nice when you had a friend over who would smoke a cigar with you, but, it was okay just individually. And I found that it also gave you a little respite from a chaotic existence at home. Even your wife doesn't want to come outside when you're smoking a cigar. She's like, I'll go out there after he's done. So that was certainly the case. It was kind of a wife and kid repellent, for a little while you're smoking a cigar. Yeah.
Today, with politics, what would you do if today you were named President of the United States of America?
Wow. Wouldn't that be something? Well, the truth is I don't have a lot of interest in politics. Over my life, as a university student and earlier in my life, I considered myself a Democrat. And then later, I considered myself a Republican. And then, for a while, I called myself a libertarian. And then an independent. And now I have to honestly say I don't have political affiliation. I just don't. I know that I hear this about how important it is to vote, and and I do vote. Unfortunately, as I said earlier, I think we have become a nation of unaffiliated politicians who are, basically out for their own personal agenda and not really looking at any total agenda. So I'm certainly not a politician. I would never run for office, nor would I accept if given office. So in terms of what I would do, there are a lot of things that I would like to see, but I don't think there's anything I could do as President of the United States. I think, unfortunately, I think America, certainly American politics, has sort of devolved. It's an interesting thing. I've thought of this many times about how, if you look at our nation, 1760, 1770s, 1780s, if you look at the people, the politicians, the absolute geniuses of who created our Constitution. I mean, they were geniuses. You look at Washington and Hamilton and Jefferson and just all of these people, and the question is, how did they come together? You only Franklin and you only get like one genius every century or so. How come you got all of these people who came together at the same place at the same time? Where did they come from? And then the follow-on question, of course, is where did they go? Why don't we see anybody, who could fill one of the roles, even a fraction of one of the roles of those individuals. And it's hard to even think of them as politicians. They weren't really politicians. They were just geniuses, and they came together at the same time. Amazingly, how that many people reached their productive years coincidentally and at the same place that's just mind-blowing. And and like I say, the follow-on, which is, where did they go? Because we don't have any of them. There's not. I mean, who would you put? Honestly, you look at the people that we've seen certainly over my lifetime, and you just have to ask, where did they go? Because there's no one even remotely like any of them, or even to have a few of the pieces of their personality or genius that they could evidence. And there's nobody.
So to get into some more specific political questions, to see where you stand. First off, is war ever ethical?
Well, I hadn't thought of that. One thing, when you look at the big picture, the truth is that despite World War I and World War II and Korean conflict, all the wars that are going on in Africa and all, this is a really peaceful time. This is really a peaceful time. Even despite all that, in the history of humanity, we were at war pretty much all the time, war over resources and so forth. And I guess, your question uses that word ethical. And of course, that relates to what we were talking about before, about how, societies and social systems and so forth, they generate their own ethics. What's ethical for, you could even bring it down to a fine cone and say, within the Christian religion, what's ethical for a Baptist might not be ethical for a Presbyterian. So, use that question. It sounds like an absolute term, ethical, but it's not absolute. It just depends on your society and your time and So, I think everybody who fights a war believes that what they're doing is ethical at the time. And, unfortunately, that winds up judged by future generations who decide, oh, no, that wasn't ethical. That was wrong. Maybe we need to rewrite history. But I feel like, most, certainly on either side of any conflict, the warriors feel that they're being ethical. Yes.
So you were talking earlier about the Constitution. So we're in a time now with social media where people are getting silenced to some degree.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on the First Amendment and free speech and how it relates to our world today? Should people be silenced? Or what are your general thoughts on free speech and how it relates to today?
Well, my general thoughts are no. No, people shouldn't be silenced. I think it is essentially what you're saying when you say that, this individual or this group or whatever shouldn't be heard. Essentially what you're saying is, I am not smart enough to evaluate anything. And so I have to depend on hearing the right stuff all the time because I'm just not bright enough to figure out, to sort through and decide what's right and what's wrong. One of our required readings when I was at MBA, I think in the 9th grade, one of our required readings was Mein Kampf, Hitler's work. I'm pretty sure today they wouldn't let you read that. It was like, no, you don't need to know anything about that. We need to silence that. I think part of being human is our ability to evaluate and to judge and to decide what's right and wrong, what's right for us, what's wrong for us, what's right for our group and not. I think you're talking about the cancel culture and, we don't want this person speaking at our university. Like what? He's going to turn you or something? I'd love to hear their justification for, whatever it is that they do. And I can, please allow me to evaluate it and decide what merit it may or may not have. But to say that, that is the equivalent of the, 18th century book burning. That is the equivalent of, no, we can't have that around because maybe somebody will believe it. And, but in our society, hopefully, what are you saying? You're just that weak-minded? Are you actually saying, I'm so weak-minded that if I heard that, I'd probably believe it? I guess that's what we're saying. And no, I'm not a fan of the cancel culture. I would like to hear it all. I'd love to hear, the justification for, I'd love to have heard Osama bin Laden's justification for what he did and why he did it and how that would have been great. Cancel culture won't allow me to enjoy that, but I would have loved to have known. And the same is true for, and maybe it's just because I don't consider myself to be that weak-minded that I would be, completely taken in by whatever anyone said. But I think the whole idea of this is probably one of the cornerstones of education, I think, is this evaluation. You need to be able, if you're educated, you need to be able to take in all kinds of information and sort it and parse it and decide how it fits with you or your culture or your belief system. And I certainly wouldn't think that anyone watching this video at whatever time would nod their head at everything that I said. Hopefully they would, they would disagree with half of what I propose. But it's, this is an interview and I'm telling you what I think. So, you can do with it as you like. But I think the whole cancel culture is sad. I think it's really sad. And I think it, like I say, I think it proposes that humans are so weak-minded that we just can't evaluate appropriately anything that we hear, that we just take it in and believe it. And I just don't think that's true. And I think the more we do this, the more we sort through and decide, who can speak and what they can say, the less we have of that process, the less we're able to develop that muscle. And then maybe we are weak-minded enough to believe anything we hear.
Yeah. So we won't go through all the amendments, but we'll go to the next one. What are your thoughts on the Second Amendment? Given the current state of America, how do you think it should be applied and enforced in America?
The Second Amendment is which one?
The right to bear arms.
Bear arms, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the truth is that I leave that to the politicians. I mean, I think we have done, unfortunately, I think we've done a disservice to the Constitution generally. I think they did a pretty good job when they wrote it. We've had a lot of amendments and not really sure any of them are worth crap. But the right to bear arms, personally, I don't have a gun. I guess I do have a gun. I have an old .22, but I'm not I don't have guns. But I do think, I do believe, obviously we have more guns in our country than we need. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. I don't know that we need that many guns, but I think, and maybe this kind of sides into another question. I think whenever you use the word control, you can just substitute people for that. When you control guns, they talk about gun control. You're not controlling guns. Guns are inanimate. You're controlling people. And whenever you control, we have rent control. New York still has rent control. When you control rent, everybody thinks, well, that's great. You're not controlling rent. You're controlling landlords. You're forcing them to do a particular, you're not controlling rent. So whenever you control drugs, you're not controlling drugs. Your drug control isn't drug. You're controlling drug lords, or you're controlling users, or you're controlling people, but you're not. Everybody is anxious to use those third person words, to say, oh well, we're just controlling a thing. You're never controlling a thing. You're controlling people. And so when you talk about gun control, you talk about how are we going to control people who own guns or potentially own them. And I guess generally I'm not in favor of controlling people. Not a big fan of rent control. Not a big fan of gun control. Not a big fan of any of those controls, because I don't like the idea of being controlled as a person. But I mean, certainly we have laws, and laws in one way or another are a control. You can't just do anything you want. But at the same time, I think obviously, let the market do what the market is going to do. And so no, I'm not a big fan of gun control, even though I'm not a big bearer of arms either.
Yeah. So here we sit in 2022, fresh off the COVID pandemic.
Right.
What are your thoughts on how we handled it as Americans, how the world handled it? And what are your overall thoughts on how everything's been the last 2 years, vaccines, and everything related to this pandemic that we're coming out of?
Yeah. Well, I think generally we've been lucky. I've actually looked at a lot of the statistical analytics, and we haven't done as well as some countries have in America, and maybe that relates to all the control that we've had. But I think we've had everybody operates on their own experience, and we've had a very long time where we haven't had pandemic illness. And the last time, big time, was in 1918. And when that pandemic, the World War I, 1918, they called it the Spanish flu, that devastated the world. I mean, it really did, and it devastated America. That is worth studying, because the COVID thing kind of came in the same, double wave and all that, the wearing of masks and all that kind of things, all mirrored that. But I don't think we handled it as well as we could have. I mean, obviously other countries did it a little bit better because their death rates were a little bit lower. But I think the big deal is it was just a shock. I mean, we had a whole generation. I'm old, but I had never experienced pandemic illness before. And, my parents' generation really hadn't experienced it. Their parents did, of course. And, but I think we've gone a long time without it. And so we kind of treated it as a novel thing. Maybe within the next, generation, maybe it won't be a novel thing. Maybe we'll have, be living with pandemic. That may be true. We have had pandemic influenza. We take a flu shot every year. At least I do. A lot of Americans take a flu shot every year, and so we have been able to, control that part of the pandemic illness. But I think there's a good chance that you said that we're over this. I think we are. I think we're over this COVID thing, but I don't know that we're over pandemic illness. We may have something else crop up in another 5 years, and maybe we'll be better if it does at handling it.
So during the same time period, we had a lot of riots in the wake of the death of George Floyd, and
Right.
A lot of unrest. So do you think minorities are unjustly discriminated against in America? And what are your thoughts on police brutality?
Well, okay, there's a couple of different topics. In terms of the George Floyd thing, and this is an interesting thing, and of course the Black Lives Matter and the same kind of riots and so forth. When I was growing up, when I was in high school and in college, the situation in America was all about black and white tension, and that was because we had different systems for blacks and whites. I remember in Nashville skating at the Hippodrome, and it was down by Vanderbilt. It's called the Hippodrome, and it was had roller skating. They had a Wurlitzer organ, which was awesome. If you've ever heard of Wurlitzer organ. It was terrific. I mean, it has a wonderful sound to it. But they would play the Wurlitzer organ. People could skate, and blacks and whites were at the Hippodrome skating. But at the far end of the Hippodrome, you entered one end, the far end of the Hippodrome, there were 4 bathrooms. There was black men, black women, white women, white men. And it was, complicated and difficult, but, we had all of this, of course it was segregation, but we did have in Nashville water fountains. The Hippodrome certainly did. It was a terrible system. I mean, it really was a terrible system. And throughout that period in the 60s, Martin Luther King, I know you don't remember any of this, but, Martin Luther King and the succeeding generations of black leaders, I think, made a tremendous amount of progress. They peaceful demonstration and so forth. And of course, we had the amendments that got rid of all these racial, divides. And we had busing, and we had lots of, it was a chaotic time, but, it was a peaceful time for coming together. I think, and I can understand, the black population being fed up with not making more progress. But unfortunately, when you have these violent, and they're not even, this business about breaking into stores and looting merchandise from real retailers and, that sort of thing. And you see these images of black people rioting and looting. I think that unfortunately that kind of brings us a couple of steps back, and a lot of the white population that might have been, we were all trending toward this unity, and I think this image just kind of serves to pull us apart again, which I think is unfortunate. But generally, we have certainly made great progress, and we're continuing to. The institutionalized stuff is basically gone. We don't have black restrooms and black water fountains, white ones. But at the same time, there's a kind of a social and emotional difference that we have to overcome. And of course, now we're faced with many more Asians and whatever other groups other than just just the black white thing, Hispanics and Asians and so forth, which at least nominally look like different racial groups, although they're not.
Yeah. So speaking of other people that may not feel that they have proper rights in America, what are your thoughts on transgender people? And specifically, do you think transgender women should be able to compete in women's sports?
Well, that's just kind of a current thing, and I understand. Once again, I don't like the idea of controlling people. I just feel like people get to do what they want to do. It's okay with me. If they behave badly, there are laws against whatever, bad behavior they could exhibit. But just being transgender or dressing differently or whatever, is that really unlawful? I don't think it should be. I mean, they should be able to do what anybody else does. I mean, as long as they obey the laws that everyone else does, that's fine with me. In fact, honestly, I can't figure out why people make such a big deal out of it. Whatever.
We're at 29 minutes.
I mean, they had a king, and like, what would those words have meant to somebody who was ruled by a freaking king? I mean, I can't even imagine that. But and to have those thoughts and those concepts still be valid today is absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, wow, have they weathered well, They weathered really, really well. And that's such a challenge. And it's a challenge culturally as well. When you think about even today in China, how are they thinking? And it's a different way from the way we're thinking.
Yeah.
And it's not inferior, it's not worse, it's just different. They greet the world in a different way. And, if you live in Argentina, or if you live in, Indonesia, how do you see the world? And I can assure you, having been to those places, they see the world in a different way. And so if you can have that much difference current time, just cultural, imagine how much difference you have 100 years ago, 200, 300, 500 years ago.
Yeah, I've wondered the same thing into our future, 200 years out. What will they look back on with us? And, something I thought about is even just eating meat. Maybe seen as a barbaric thing that we did. Wow, they ate meat. Yeah. Actual meat, And to us, we don't think twice about it.
Absolutely. Stuff yourself with hamburgers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that may be absolutely true. Or they lived in individual houses. Yeah. I cannot believe they did that. That such a waste of resources and land, and how could they have lived in individual? They drove individual metal boxes around that weighed tons to carry one person, and how could they have ever thought that was? I mean, you know that you're going to be, like I say, we look through it with our own lenses, and we think, oh, this is just right. This is the way life is. This is how but we can look at the past and go, those guys didn't have it right, and how they screwed up. But we've got it the way it's supposed to be. We will be judged. I can assure you, we will be judged, and probably not very fondly. Probably not very fondly at all.
Yeah.
People are going to look and say, "Well, you're such a wasteful people, squandered all of our resources. You bought clothing just because it was cool. You didn't need it. You just bought it and, traded credits for it." And I think that's, I think we will be judged. I really do.
Oh, we're already rolling. So if you
are we? Okay. Yeah.
So
talk about
sticking on the rights in society topic, considering the advancements in AI,
right?
Do you think robots deserve rights in society the same way humans do?
Yeah, the problem is whenever you use that term rights, you've also got the responsibilities on the other side. Are they going to be responsible for something if they're going to have rights? And I think if you're creating a robot of any kind, I think it is. I think it would be important to have responsibilities as well as rights, and I'm not sure that you can assign responsibilities in an absolute way to robots. Maybe you can. I mean, maybe you can't now, but you will be able to. I mean, maybe AI will, will allow that. I think our road to artificial intelligence is much shorter than we imagine right now. I think we'll have that, but we don't now, and so it's, I think that's, what do you want to call it? To be determined? Yeah, to be determined. I think it'll be interesting to see how we do develop that, and how I hope to see it in my lifetime. I hope to be able to witness that. I think that would be great. I would love to see it, but yeah, I don't know what the responsibilities of all robots would be, so I don't know what rights you could grant them. This is all projection, since we don't have it yet. Of course, maybe somebody in the future will be looking at this, being shown a screen by his robot. Possible.
So you lived through the 70s, which historically was known as a very free-spirited time period. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on marijuana? A lot of states now are legalizing it. Mm-hmm. Do you think it should be legal? What do you think the boundaries should be on marijuana?
Well, the 70s was a great time. I graduated from college in '72, and it was awesome, I must say. It was sort of that sweet spot between birth control and AIDS. We had birth control, and then we didn't have AIDS, and so it was just like this little window. So it was very cool, and yeah, marijuana was was pretty much everywhere. The problem with marijuana was, certainly, I think the problem now, I'm not really sure, most places, was that they called it a gateway drug because it was illegal, just like cocaine and heroin. It was illegal, and so it was handled by the same people who handled cocaine and heroin. And so you could establish a relationship with those people to get your marijuana and then wind up being dragged into harder, more aggressive drugs. I think where they've legalized marijuana, I think you've seen, more of a separation between marijuana and those harder drugs. And so I think it's possible that that's a good outcome, that people buying marijuana are not necessarily exposed to other illegal drugs. I think in terms of the drug itself, like everybody in the 70s, I smoked marijuana. I think everybody did. But it was it was just a fun drug. It was just a fun drug. And I don't know if people they might be psychologically somehow addicted, but I don't think they were physically addicted to marijuana. When I got out of college, or got out of graduate school actually, and started a real job, I quit smoking marijuana. It wasn't like there was any withdrawal or anything like that. I just didn't do it anymore. And I think I understand. I haven't tried, but I understand that marijuana is a lot stronger now than it was in the 70s. So, maybe there's some difference in that. But certainly when we smoked marijuana, it wasn't very different from drinking alcohol. People would get high on marijuana or get high on booze, and it wasn't that much of a difference. You certainly didn't want to be driving, and you were incapacitated for all kinds of things. But the same thing, with alcohol. But I think ultimately, all states will legalize marijuana, and I think there are two reasons, and they really are just one, and that is money. I think there's a huge revenue to be had from taxing marijuana sales, as there is from taxing cigarettes and alcohol. So I think it's going to be difficult for states to turn their backs on all that potential revenue. And then second, there's a lot of state money that is being spent toward enforcement of marijuana sales. And if you don't have to have all those SWAT teams and all that kind of stuff, I think generally states will see expenses fall and revenues rise. And I think there's not a state in the union that doesn't need that. So I think ultimately you'll see that. You see that in terms of clusters, state clusters, and I think that will continue. If you can go across the border and get marijuana, one of these things, it's like, well, why are we letting Colorado get all the revenue? Well, we need some ourselves. So I think that's, you're going to see those sprinklings, and then you'll see clusters, and then you see, expansion. And I don't know what the timeline is on this. It might be another 5 years, but I think soon you'll see that.
Yeah. I actually have a couple more political questions.
Oh, okay.
this one might be, pretty deep. So if she doesn't answer, but there was recently a Supreme Court leak that Roe v. Wade might be overturned. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on abortion and the potential overturn of Roe v. Wade?
Yeah. Well, in terms of the potential of Roe v. Wade being overturned, I think it should be. I don't think this is a federal issue. I think it's a state issue. And, that's in the Constitution. Anything not specifically nominated here, falls to the states. And so I think just from a legal perspective, I think it's a state issue. So there's that. Regarding the leak, I think that's sad. I just think that's plain sad. I think we're, this is like part of the social media thing. Somebody's decided, some clerk probably decided that their view is right and everybody else's view is wrong, and they're going to try to, overturn this and make sure that the court doesn't overturn Roe v. Wade. But I think that that refers to what we were talking about before. Everybody thinks they've got it right and everybody else has got it wrong. And in terms of my own beliefs about abortion, those have evolved over time. When I was young, I was certainly very much pro legalized abortion, and there were several reasons for that. First because women's rights, that was a big deal at the time, and second because I think a lot of women got into trouble with illegal abortions, and those approaches were not good, and some women actually died as a result of those attempts at abortion. So I was pro legalized abortion. Over time, I guess I'm a little bit more ambivalent about it because I have, whether you want to call it the sanctity of human life or whatever, I feel like that's that's a very tough thing to do. And I have personally been affected by that. Cammie is 18 months old, and she's a ball of fire and has a great big smile, lots of teeth, and her birth mom had told Sarah in a kind of an offhand way that she had wanted to get an abortion, but by the time she got into the doctor, that it was too late. The fetus was too far developed, and so she was just going to have the child and give it away for adoption. And I thought, wow, denying the world, that little human life, pretty tough. So that's what I think.
Gotcha. Appreciate that. So moving on to President Trump, was a very controversial figure, and I'm sure over the next 10 to 50 years, there will be many different things written about him.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on President Trump? I'll just leave it at that. What were your thoughts on President Trump?
Well, on his original election, I guess, and
everything encompassing the election to the job he did as president to anything else. do you feel is important for people who may have not experienced President Trump?
Yeah. Well, I thought that that Donald Trump was just an example of a true personality cult. I think he could have run as a Democrat or as a Republican or as an independent, and I think the same people would have voted for him. I think he was is a true megalomaniac, and I think there's a saying that even a blind hog will root up a truffle every once in a while, and I think that's true. I think he did a lot of things that were really great. Just as I think, Adolf Hitler did a lot of things that were really great. Unfortunately, those things are completely overshadowed by the evil that he did too. So, in terms of Trump, I think he was onto something. I mean, he certainly had a following, and I think he did a lot of of things that were that were good. I liked his trade policy. I thought having dealt in international business, I absolutely agreed with a lot of the things he did in terms of trade policy, specifically with China. And I liked I liked a lot of the things that he did. Even in handling the pandemic, I thought a lot of his approaches were good. But I think all of those good things, of course, he came into office at a time when the whole cancel culture thing was ramping up, and so everybody had to, hate him or love him or whatever. It was an absolutist thing, that was going on. I I certainly hope most Americans would never want to have him in office again. And I think all of that, at least for me, just comes down to the fact that he was just, I guess maybe he's as close as we ever have come in our generation to having a king. But I do think that personality trait, and the truth is you have to have a little bit of that. I think if you want to be a politician, you have to believe, you have to have a certitude about your own decisions, and and I get that, but it certainly worried me about his administration. The problem is, for me, that I didn't have anyone else to vote for either, so I felt like I needed to vote, and I didn't have anybody I wanted to vote for. It was almost like close your eyes and push a button, because, there wasn't any good choice, unfortunately.
All right, that's it for politics. So we're all done with those.
Right.
So looking into the future, if you could have a vision of the next 50 years, the next 100 years, what do you see the world looking like? What are the really great things that you're looking forward to that may come to fruition in 50 or 100 years? What are the obstacles you think that we may not be seeing that may be a bad component of the next 50 to 100 years?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you right off the bat, I think one of the true visionaries of our time, maybe the principal visionary of our time, is Elon Musk. And I think his vision is a lot more than, certainly I guess electric cars play a part in it, but that's not really, his vision. I mean, his vision includes humanity becoming an interplanetary species. And I think that is really important. Whether that'll come in 50 or 100 years or longer, I don't know. But I think it's important that humans become an interplanetary species. And I think we will. I think we will also, we better master what's going on planet Earth. So hopefully, we will, in one way or another, be able to control global warming and pollution and our problem with the oceans that we have now, even, the pollution with oceans. And I hope, although I don't see a course to it right now, but I'm really hoping that we'll get past the stage that we're in right now that we talked about before, this whole cancel culture thing, and appreciate that there are many right answers. There are many, many right answers. So I think that's important. Like I say, I kind of fear that we're moving farther away from that rather than closer to it. But hopefully we'll get over this stage, and the next generation will get past that. We'll see. But yeah, I would love to see a time when we're a real interplanetary species. That would be cool.
So, in that same vein, do you think aliens exist?
Oh, I don't think there's any questions that aliens exist. The question is whether or not any of them have ever come here. I don't know about that. But do they exist? Yeah, I think the odds are just real strong that they do. And yeah. And who knows? They may be us. I don't know. But yeah, I do think that they exist, and that would be wonderful to encounter that. I doubt that we've encountered any aliens on planet Earth, but that would be cool. That would be neat. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that out there, it's a big universe, Yeah, pretty sure they do.
So speaking of odds, a lot of people like Elon Musk say it's more likely that we're living in a simulation than not. Do you think we're living in a simulation?
That is a big brain question, and I don't have a big brain. I don't know. I read that too, and I thought it was really interesting. I don't know. He's a big brain, so he can. I'm sure he has the right to question that. I don't know.
You're,
a future ahead of you, and that's all behind me. So, I would be much more likely to say yes to an opportunity like that. And yet, I'm not one that he would want to take up a seat. He would want you to take up a seat. So, I doubt that I would ever be going. But yeah, I would be much more likely to say yes than you would be.
So if you were able to live forever, would you?
That's That's a real question. I have thought of this actually, in terms of the religious promise of everlasting life. And in a way, everlasting life, this is to me, everlasting life and that promise is for others. It's not for me. I think when you have a family infrastructure, generations before you die, and when they die, the religious promise is, don't worry about that. They've only transitioned. They have another life. And that makes you feel good. I mean, you feel positive, like their life isn't over, that it's ongoing. And that's great. That's a good promise and a good feeling. For me, I've thought about that. You hear that all the time. Oh, well, Papa is up there looking down on us when we're, whatever, won the gold medal. Well, that's okay. And I can kind of see that. I can see the advantage to that. But you're talking about everlasting life. So I could see, looking down, there's Russell. I'm glad to see he's got 2 kids. There's Jenny and Sarah, and I can see that for a couple of generations, 3 or 4, But then it starts getting real muddy, and then it's like, I don't know anybody, and this person, I guess, is related to me, or I don't really care, and then it's like more and then it's like everlasting. Really, would I want that? Like looking at a planet that has been burned to a crisp, and no other. I mean, do I want everlasting life? I mean, that's like really, really, really long time, and I don't know that I would want that. I want it for others. I want to be able to think that my mom and my dad are still somehow with me, and that they haven't been erased. But I really want that for me. That sounds kind of scary. I don't know that I would want that for me. And I don't know that I would really want that for them, to be honest. But it is a comforting thought that they aren't gone.
So what do you think happens after you die?
My attitude about that, like a lot of things in life, has changed over time. And I think ultimately as I'm older now, my belief is similar to my father's belief, my dad, who believed that nothing happens. You're just dead, John Prine said that his dad said, once you're dead, you're just a dead peckerhead. And so I think clearly no one knows. I mean, nobody knows. But, I don't have any expectation that, certainly not the classic expectations. I'm not going to put on a white choir robe and grow wings. I don't know, learn to play the harp. I don't know. But I don't know what what my consciousness might transition to. I have to tell you, my consciousness at night transitions to all kinds of crazy shit. I mean, when I dream at night, my consciousness is just, all kinds of crazy stuff. So I don't know that I would want that either, but certainly my dad felt that way. My grandfather felt that way, and maybe that I don't know. I know that there's they've identified what they call the God gene. The gene in your DNA that makes you more likely to believe, to just have a belief. In whatever, whether it's a superior being or, whatever, but just to believe. And as I get older, I don't think I have that. And I know my dad didn't, my grandfather didn't. So, yeah, that's kind of what I think.
So when you die, what do you want to be written on your tombstone?
The truth is, honestly, I don't think it matters. I really don't. I think I probably won't have a tombstone anyway. And, over half of deaths in America are now cremations. And that has changed in the last 40 years dramatically, and probably over the next 10 years, it's going to be, 80%, something close to that. And in cremations, there are only a limited number of cremations that ever, are placed in a niche or have some headstone or whatever. My dad was cremated, and he has a headstone. But that's increasingly rare. So I don't know. I may not even have a headstone. I think most of that is important to that succeeding generation. I go occasionally to my dad's grave, my mom's grave. I do visit that. I don't think my children will ever do that. And I'm pretty sure the next generation will never do that. Adeline and Charlie, I don't think that they will have any affiliation to these people that they ever really knew. So I think most of that death, pomp, and circumstance is it has a limited lifespan. Like only just another generation or two.
So outside of the literal, what is written on your tombstone, what about figuratively? What do you want to be remembered for? What do you want people to think of you when they think of Uncle Jack?
Well, most of what I have enjoyed in life has been in retirement. I worked a lot, and I enjoyed a lot of the things that I did, and I certainly got a lot of memories, and those were formative years, and that was a great thing. But I really do enjoy being useful, making a contribution to the people that I know and the people that I love. I think I do that, both I certainly make financial contributions to the people that I know and love, and I make contributions, hopefully, in terms of good advice and good guidance, and I like that. You know, a lot of people like to make that contribution to people they don't know, and you know, to be generous with their time and in giving, and you know, and service. And for me, I guess it's more focused on my family, my direct family and my indirect family, you know, to help them in, I guess, small ways and large. You know, I feel like I've put together a, you know, a pretty good mix of experiences, some positive and some negative, and you know, I'm able to offer that, you know, as a, you know, to help them to analyze what their decisions will be, and they've, you know, I can see that has been a help in some cases. So I guess that's what I would say is a contribution that is important to me.
So when you say love, how do you define love?
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, that's, you know, I mean, clearly there are different kinds of love. But I feel like, you know, love is just any kind of emotional connection with another living thing. You know, people say that they love their dogs. You know, I guess you can love a dog. I'm not sure. You know, maybe you can love a dog. You know, Jenny has a couple of dogs. She says she loves her dogs. You know, I guess you can. But Sarah has a couple of dogs, you know. Love your dog. But I think when I think of love, I think of that connection with people, with human beings, and they are the ones that are in my family. You know, Mike is good about this lineage thing, you know, who's in your family and who's, you know, married into the family, and it's not the bloodline, and it's not, you know. But to me, those lines kind of blur, you know, just on the personal level. And, you know, if somebody is married into the family, I love them. I mean, you know, I love them. And so I have a love for those relationships, maybe not for dogs, but for people. And so those relationships are, you know, they're hard to sever. You know, difficult to, we lost, you know, Jenny's husband to divorce, and that's a very hard thing for me. Really hard. And your dad was the same, you know. I really, and still do, I really love Jim, you know. I don't get to see him very often, but I really love him. So it's tough when you establish a love relationship and, you know, you don't get to fulfill it very often. Yeah.
So what about success? And specifically success in life? How do you define what success is in life?
Yeah. Well, you know, success is all about goals. You know, either you attain your goals and you're successful, or you fall short of your goals and you're not. So, you know, the only way to analyze success is to analyze goals. You know, to think about what are your goals, what would make you successful if you achieved certain goals. And the thing is that goals change, and they should. I mean, hopefully they should. Hopefully they do. You have certain things that are your goals in high school, and they could be to get into a particular college or, whatever. You get in, you're a success, succeeded. And then you have other goals in college and other goals in your life, and, you have goals in marriage, and the tricky part is sorting out which goals are worthwhile. Because you have goals. I mean, if you work, you have goals. They're documented. You have goals, okay? And so you reach them, and then you're like, well, I guess I'm a success. I increased sales by 23%. It's a success. But ultimately, you start sorting all that stuff out. Nobody remembers that. Nobody cares about that. It's just bullshit. And, that was really important at the time. And it was a goal that I had, and I was successful in that, score. But hopefully you can create a set of goals that relate to those people that I said earlier that you love, and hopefully you can say, yeah, I really succeeded in that. I really helped him. I really helped her. I really did something. I was really I was a success in dealing with the people that I love. And so that's really important.
Do you feel like you personally have been a success?
At some things, yeah, I do. At some things, certainly not at everything. Yeah, absolutely not. But yeah, at some things.
So what do you think, what do you feel makes you unique to other people? What makes you you? What makes you individualistic versus other people? What differentiates you as Uncle Jack?
Well, I'll start off by saying I don't think I'm very different. I think we're all, we all have our unique traits and our unique thoughts, and maybe good at some things, not good at other things, and so I don't think I'm that special, but I do think that I have a unique analytical curiosity. I think I like to know about things, and I like to analyze things, and I like to, I'm very curious about things. And I kind of thought, actually, this is kind of interesting. I kind of thought that would slow down, as I got older. I kind of thought, you hear about this stuff, people being set in their ways and not wanting to change and and Lord knows I have a lot of friends who are like that. A lot of friends who are my age who are, who are like that, and they don't want to change, and they don't even want to ride in an electric car. They don't want, that they're, they have become sort of ossified. And I thought, I actually kind of expected myself to do that. I expected that of myself. And for some reason it didn't happen. I don't know why. But I guess that makes it sort of a unique thing, makes me a little different, because I'm always interested in I'm always interested in that, having that curiosity and being analytical. I'm trying to pull less of my own pre-thoughts and just be analytical and say, gee, I'm really interested in this, and I'm not going to screen it through my own screen. I just want to see it, just want to evaluate it. And I guess that's how I'm a little bit unique, maybe.
So since you do more research and that type of thing than other people, you may know more than a lot of people on particular subjects. What's a belief that you hold that most people disagree with?
Oh God, that's got to be like everything. Yeah, it's got to be like everything.
Fair enough.
I think, I wouldn't even know where to start with that. I think I can be a very frustrating person to talk with and to deal with. Yeah, I think so, because I have unique thoughts on most things. Yeah.
Do you feel older or younger than your age?
I don't know if this is unique or not, but I feel younger than my age. I feel young. And perhaps that may be because I've just been genetically lucky. I'm still there. I know a lot of people who are at 72, who are, are unable to comfortably move around and walk and even think. A lot of people lose a little bit of their faculty as they age, and I'm sure I've slowed down. I'm sure I've lost a bit, but I feel younger than my age because I feel like I am younger than my age because I am not like a lot of other people who are my age, and so I guess there are some people who are my age who were genetically lucky as well. I actually can't think of any at the moment. Let's see. Yeah, can't really think of any at the moment. But just been fortunate. But as I said earlier, you're just one bad diagnosis away from, a change.
So what do you wish you would have spent more time doing in your life up to this point?
Well, not at the office. I guess it would have been better to spend more time with my kids. I envy Scott, who works at home and is able to take a break and be with his kids and read a book or, whatever. I didn't have that luxury. I left in the morning, sometimes before they were even up, and came back in the evening. And I traveled a lot, so there were a lot of times when I would be, Monday through Thursday kind of thing. I'd be out of town. So, yeah, I wish I had had the opportunity to spend more time with my kids. I considered myself to be a pretty present father. I specifically did not take up certain hobbies, like playing golf, just so that I could, have those times with my family. But yeah, I'm definitely envious of any fathers who are able to spend time at home and spend more time with their children.
Yeah. So hypothetically, if you had the opportunity to get a message across to the entire world, what would that message be?
Wow. To get a message across to the whole world. Well, it would be more than a sentence, I guess. But I guess it would have something to do with backing away from your predispositions and your presuppositions. I guess it would be something to do with being less pedantic and maybe less confident. I think the world is full of overconfident folks, confident in their own beliefs, confident in their own mores, confident in themselves, and therefore it's a tough assignment for them to relate to others. So yeah, I think I would say be less confident in your own rectitude. Yeah, be less confident in your own rectitude. There are a lot of right answers. There really are. And I think if we did that worldwide, I think America is much more guilty of that than most of the world. But there are certainly areas of the world where they're absolutely confident in their own rectitude, and they, everything else other than that is wrong. So, yeah, that's my advice to the world. Be less confident in your own rectitude.
That's awesome.
Actually getting there, standing in the cemetery and seeing the grave, was actually anticlimactic. That his drive out there was the thing that, brought up memories, made him think about her. Yeah.
So, Uncle Jack, if you found a winning lottery ticket today for $100 million,
Wow.
what would your next week, year, 10 years look like?
Yeah. Well, the truth is, I know this will sound a little corny, but I'll tell you, I really did hit the lottery. I've got a great wife, a couple of great kids, grandkids. That's hitting the lottery for sure. And in terms of money, when you talk about the lottery, it's all about money. And the truth is that I have been, like all of my siblings and my parents before me, I've been very fortunate. And, because I've been, we all have plenty of money. We all have the ability to do whatever we want to do. Your mom wants to have a horse, you get a horse. You want to go to Italy, we go to Italy. So we have enough money that the lottery would not be life-changing for us. And I know that for a lot of people, it would be. Certainly for working people, it would be, because you probably wouldn't work anymore. So that would be completely life-changing. But for me, I'm already retired and I have all the money that I can spend, that we can spend. So the lottery is not as good a question for me as it would be for a younger person. Then you're talking about perhaps changing a direction in life, perhaps, vectoring to something entirely different in life. And the truth is, as a retiree, without working and having all the money that I need, way more than all the money that I need, my biggest concern now in my life is how I transfer wealth to the next generation, partially now and then, as a larger amount later. So the lottery question is not as important to me now as it, perhaps would be to you. As a short answer, I would say likely I would, I guess the pat answer would be, I would give such money to charity and would give, and then so much to my succeeding generations. The truth is, I would probably give all of it to my succeeding generations, because they happen to be competent, smart people. And by the time that money would be needed for something, they would be, whether it's a charity or whatever, they would be more suited to do that than I would be, because it would be further down the line. So, yeah, I know that's kind of a boring answer, but that's my answer.
So what defines a man to you? Not biologically, but what defines being a man to you?
Yeah. Well, I think it is, you're talking about characteristics or qualities of manliness. To me, it is being competent and at the same time generously understanding. I would say generously understanding and competent. I think it's being a person that can be counted on and can be depended on because you're competent, but you're also generous and understanding of the needs of others. Hopefully you're sensitive enough to know when people need you, and you don't have to be asked. But when you are asked, you can be competent in your response and generous.
And what defines a leader to you, whether it's in business or in life?
Yeah. To be a good leader, you have to be somebody that people want to follow. And there's You know about ducks? They fly in the chevron pattern when they migrate. And a different duck will take over the front lead at different times because they have to take the brunt of the oncoming air, and then the air is sloughed off throughout all the... So once he gets tired, somebody else takes his lead. And that leader, sets the compass heading. And occasionally, a duck can get carried away with that, and just sort of like, he'll move over there, everybody has to move, he'll move back, everybody has to move, gets kind of carried away, and he can do that until he's taken them off course. And then he can move this way, and everybody just kind of closes ranks and heads south. So a leader is a leader until the others don't want to follow him anymore, until he's taken in the wrong direction. And I think that's something to always keep in mind about leadership. You can only be a leader as long as you're taking everybody where they want to go. And that's not just being a good leader. That's being a leader at all. You got to take everybody where they want to go. And so you've got to, if you're going to be a good leader, you got to take their temperature all the time. You got to know where people want to go so you can take them there. And when you get too big ahead and you're just like, oh, I think I'll take everybody east, and they just close ranks and they keep going south. And so it is it's a challenge. It's a challenge to be a good leader. You've got to figure out where people want to go so you can take them there.
Where are, outside of the places you've lived, where are the favorite places that you've traveled during your lifetime?
Well, the truth is I have developed over time my shit list and my best places list, and I have them. I have them by state, by country. So we could do this for a long time. Generally on my shit list is most of the Rust Belt area. Cleveland, Detroit, Buffalo, New York is probably number one on my shit list. Not big fan of Pittsburgh. Sorry, Rachel, but yeah, not a fan of Pittsburgh. There are a number on my shit list, and then there are my best places lists. Great. In fact, you can do it by state. For example, in Texas is unique. It's got some of my top-rated cities and some of my bottom-rated cities in Texas. I love Dallas. Dallas is fabulous. Arlington is great. Fort Worth is, that whole complex there of Dallas, Fort Worth. Dallas is very sophisticated, big city, very cool, lots to do. Fort Worth is this sort of shit-kicking cow town, that is fun, and a lot of great things in Fort Worth. There's Houston, which is on my shit list. Not a good city. Terribly organized, not enough parking or enough of anything else. Terrible restaurants in Houston. It's not a good place. It's low, humid, hot. It's not good. Also, Brownsville, Texas is on my shit list. It is a horrible place. You never want to go to Brownsville if you can avoid it. And if you go to West Texas, all of those cities, like Waco, horrible. Abilene is not too bad. Amarillo, but there's some great places and some horrible places in Texas. And there are cities that have evolved too. Seattle and Portland, both in the Northwest, they used to be on my list of the best cities in the nation. I loved going to Seattle, loved going to Portland. Now, no longer, So, that changes all the time. And Nashville, which was always on my great list, is even better. So it's like on my super great list. So that's a good. I always had obviously an emotional attachment to Nashville anyway. But I think everybody agrees now. It's a wonderful city. In Europe, places that I've been, I love. Paris is fabulous. London is fabulous. Berlin, great city. Most of the big cities are wonderful cities. They're not necessarily representative, but they're of their nations, but they're great cities. I like Tokyo. That's quite an experience. Tokyo is quite an experience. It's a wonderful city, great city. Singapore, of course, although I haven't been there in years, but Singapore, a wonderful place to live. Very secure, very really varied. So many different cuisines, so many different ways to spend your time. Great offerings there. Thailand, I love Thailand. More the country than Bangkok. Bangkok is actually very much like Atlanta, in that it's been said of Atlanta that Atlanta is like an island in the Sea of Georgia. And that's true. You've got this one heavily urban city, and then you've got the rest of the state that's basically, a peanut farm. It's highly agricultural, very rural. That's the way the state of Georgia is. And then you've got this one urban center, and that's the way it is in Thailand. Thailand is just one big freaking rice paddy. That's what Thailand is. And then you've got Bangkok, which is a big, bustling urban center in the in the middle. One of the interesting things, I don't know why it developed, but it's one of the interesting things in Tennessee. That Tennessee is unique in having multiple urban areas throughout the state, Knoxville, Chattanooga, Memphis, Nashville, and different, urban or semi-urban areas. But Thailand just developed that way. You've got the urban center of Bangkok, and everything else is very, very agricultural and rural and really cool. In Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, great city. It's a marvelous city in Malaysia. Indonesia has a lot of great, Sumatra generally is great. Eastern Malaysia is great. Sabah and Sarawak, on the island of Borneo. Cool, interesting. The one thing that I have not done, I haven't traveled in Latin America. And of course, Charlotte went to high school in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. And we had planned to go to a high school reunion. We had our tickets to go to Buenos Aires, and then she had this knee problem, and then we got knee replacement surgery, so we didn't get to do that. Is that kind of a broad brush?
Yeah, that's great.
Close enough.
I would love to zoom in a little bit on Nashville. So what was it like when you were growing up, and what has it been like seeing the growth of Nashville and what it is today?
Yeah, I mean, it's terrific and inexplicable. I mean, I don't know why that is, but Nashville has been great. You know, when I grew up in Nashville, it was a small town, and when I grew up in Nashville in the '60s, it was very interesting. There was development in the southeast of the United States, and there wasn't